Periodization. So the first thing that we need to consider is what actually is periodization. To put it simply, as outlined by Bufford back in 2007, it's planned manipulation of training variables such as volume, intensity, and frequency. These variables are adjusted strategically over time to elicit specific training responses and to maximize your progress. But again, we need to consider factors such as recovery capacity, but also injury, because that can actually limit the extent of adaptation achievable within a training program. Now, to address these limitations and to ensure sustainable progress, we also need to consider things like adherence and sustainability that has to be integrated into the manipulation of these training variables, because without adherence and without consistency, simply you will not get a result. So by manipulating your volume, your intensity, your frequency, if you're just training once a week when you're meant to be training 4 times per week and you're trying to manipulate these areas, it simply won't work. Now, there are various models which have been proposed to guide the manipulation process. Again, granted that adherence and consistency is at 100%, they do offer distinct strategies for structuring programs. These models include the linear approach, where volume decreases as intensity increases over time. We've also got the reverse linear method, which means intensity decreases as volume increases over time. We've then got the block model, which focuses on low load, high volume, then high load, low volume in sections, and then finally the undulating model, which is a weekly rotation of volume and also intensity based on how you recover. And depending on which model that you tend to use, essentially it's going to be the one that works for you to help minimize the risk of overtraining and or injury. So which model is going to be best? Well, in practical application, these models are often combined, all 4 together, rather than just used in isolation, especially when it comes to hypertrophy. There's no single model that's been definitively proven to be superior to others when volume is equated. Again, what works for you may not work for somebody else. What works for you may work for somebody else, but we need to look at the effectiveness of that training plan and the ability to accommodate optimal training volume while allowing for adequate recovery. This means that the best plan is the one that strikes a balance between work and also recovery capacity. So throughout your specific training block over the next couple of weeks, months, throughout the year, programming variables will typically incorporate elements from all of these models, and it does reflect the dynamic nature of training and the need for varied stimuli to optimize progress and adaptation. So the periodization model applied: linear, undulating, block. When we actually design an effective training program, we need to consider these models and apply them. So again, linear progression involves gradually increasing both load and reps within the hypertrophy rep range. So let's say, for example, week 1, you do 100 kilos barbell bench for 8 repetitions. Then in week 2, you might increase both the load and the reps. So 105 kilo for 10 repetitions. But again, I would actually pick one over the other, increase your reps or increase the load, while adjusting volume based on your recovery. You may go into a session, you may feel super tired, therefore you may need to match the baseline volume or the load to make sure that we are still hitting quality reps and also sets. Now, the undulating approach introduces variability by fluctuating rep ranges across training days, taking into account movement patterns, readiness, and joints or even tissue health. So that could be a case of you do a set of 6 to 9, a set of 10 to 12, or a set of 15. Now, the block model actually structures training periods to align with changes in recovery capacity. So it could be strength, hypertrophy power blocks, And again, volume is going to be reduced during times of lower recovery. So if you're not recovering and you're trying to run a marathon or climb Mount Everest or be the world's strongest man, simply you're not going to, which is why recovery is seriously underrated when it comes to progressing inside the gym. When we integrate these elements from each model, we can actually create a comprehensive training program which promotes consistent progress, minimizing the risk of overtraining and injury. I like the linear model, but again, I've used all 3 or even 4 models. Linear model serves the most progression for my training. So a macro cycle, what is it? Well, when we're looking at long-term programming, the approach shifts towards a broader perspective throughout the calendar year. So beyond like short-term adjustments based on recovery, long-term planning actually involves mapping out the entire year to align with specific physique goals and also like timelines. So whether you're going on holiday, whether you have a photo shoot prep, whether you are entering a competition prep, it's so crucial that we determine your program needs for the year ahead within the next 4 weeks or within the next 40 weeks. When we actually integrate elements into your planned process, we can strategically structure your training cycles to optimize your progress, look at recovery, and look at the desired outcome over the course of the year. So that could be as simple as you go through a fat loss phase, a maintenance phase, an off season with a few mini cuts, and then you start pre-preparation for kind of holiday prep, photo shoot prep, or even a contest preparation as well. So don't just think short term, think long term. Think about when your next goal needs to be achieved by and break it down into smaller chunks like 4 weeks or even longer chunks up to 12 to 16 weeks within a entire macro cycle. So looking at across the year and then breaking it down into smaller meso cycles. So this is what a yearly planned macro cycle might look like. We divide the training year into distinct blocks, each serving a specific purpose, supporting overall progress and performance. So post-show, you might do 5 to 12 months. Again, you're going to do an off-season block, 6-week volume, then you got a deload, 6-week volume, then you got a deload, 6-week volume, then you got a deload. Again, that's 18 weeks. The deload could serve as like a 7-day period. It depends on how long you actually need to recover. Then you got a pre-contest block, 4 to 6 months. So you got an 8-week volume block, a deload, or even a taper, devolume, 8-week volume block, and then you could peak or even deload. And again, it's really important that we look at this long term as well as on a week by week basis. When we structure your training throughout the year, we can periodize your training to optimize progress and achieve peak performance, especially during the competitive season, holiday prep, or even a photo shoot prep.